Hi friends, it's Carrie Scroggins from Conversations at Carrie's Corner. Hope you're having a blessed day wherever you are. This podcast is all about helping all of us get back to the middle and learn to communicate with each other. Our nation is at a point where we are so divided because we don't communicate. We don't listen to each other's point of view. And we used to be able to do that. When you think of this podcast, there's a picture that I want you to think about, and it's a corner diner where you could go in and you could grab a coffee and sit down at the counter and have a sandwich or pancakes or a slice of pie and have a conversation with the person that you're sitting with that 9 times out of 10 you didn't know who they were. And you could come out of that conversation thinking maybe you thought differently about something, or you made a new friend, but you had a conversation and you could talk about the things that were affecting your life at that particular time. We have lost the ability to do that in the United States. So this podcast is available for us to talk about whatever the subject is that you would like to talk about. Politics, relationships, families, entrepreneurship, the economy, the border crisis. Any and all things are available at this podcast, because we've got to learn to be able to come back to the middle, because that's where change begins. That's where we can have a conversation, respect each other's opinion, and then move forward to make a positive change in our society. We have to learn to communicate again. If we don't, I really don't know where we're going to be. And so at the beginning here, this is podcast number 5. At the beginning here in the infancy of this podcast channel, I just want to talk about some things that I see that affect not only my life, but the people around me, my clients. I'm a business owner. I have 2 full-time jobs. I'm also a content creator. And I'm married. I have a wonderful husband and 3 children, 4 grandchildren. And I'm worried about where our country is headed and how we're going to move forward so they can have their American dream. I came to this country in the late 60s from Australia, and I have lived that American dream. I've been very, very blessed. I had a very different upbringing than most people, and so I have a different perspective on a lot of things because I think differently, because I come from a different type of upbringing, the way my parents brought us up and where my childhood took place. I grew up on the professional golfers circuit with my dad. He's a retired pro golfer. And so I have a different outlook on a lot of things because I was exposed to at a very young age to being around adults and hearing adult conversations and being able to pick up on those differences between those people and having a skill set to be able to listen and sort of bridge the gap. And so that's why I decided to do this podcast, because I think it's important that we learn to communicate with each other and that we address so many of the chronic problems that our society is plagued with. And there's a bunch, as we all know. We're in the middle of the most vicious presidential election than I could ever remember. And it is a pivotal moment in our life and in our future, this country. And if we don't figure out how to communicate with each other, we're going to be in a civil war again, and that would be catastrophic for everybody involved. So we got to figure out how to not let that happen, and the best way to do that is to learn to communicate with each other, respect each other's opinions, and treat each other the way we want to be treated. I don't see that at all. So today I wanted to talk about a terrible subject that's affecting and plaguing so much of the American society, and it's a chronic health condition called chronic pain. And it's debilitating. It's a staggering number. Over 50% of Americans suffer with chronic pain that prevents them from working or living. They become disabled, and then their lives become this small vacuum where they miss out on so many things because they are just living with this cancerous, consuming, constant pain. If you've never experienced that kind of pain, I don't know that you can truly understand. I want you to think back to your worst injury you've ever had and then live with that every day, day in and day out, almost 24 hours a day. You get to the point where you lose who you are. You lose your identity. You lose sometimes your jobs and your families and your careers and your finances. It can affect every single part of your life, and it can consume it if you don't have a good support system, if you don't have good doctors, good families, good relationships, and most of all, great power within yourself to live with it and say, it's not going to conquer me. It's not going to take my life. It's not going to take my finances. It's not going to take my family and my relationships and my career. But it does. And it does way too often. Part of that is because we are compromised. We don't live healthy. We live on processed foods. We work way too much. We are under way too much stress. Too many people are overweight. Too many people don't eat right. Too many people drink too much. I mean, I could go on and on. But it is an epidemic that is making us the sickest nation on earth. And we spend more on medical bills than anywhere else in the world. So it's a chronic problem, and it's a devastating problem. And when you're in the midst of it and you're trying to get through every hour because of the pain, then you, rightfully so, lose your ability to keep everything else juggling and working and functioning because the pain becomes all consuming. I suffer with chronic pain. I am very, very fortunate, however, that I had very good doctors very on in my injury, and I have been able to control my pain through an implanted pain pump that controls my pain. If I didn't have that, I really don't know if I would be here. My husband is going through a massive recovery right now from massive neck surgery, and he is trying to cope with his chronic pain. And unless you've experienced it yourself, it's very hard for you, if you haven't experienced, to understand what that person is going through. It's terrible, because one minute you feel okay, and then the next minute you feel like you've got to go lay down, and you're in agony and you're miserable, and the only thing you can do is just to go to your room, lay down, turn the lights off, turn the air conditioner, and just try to cope with the pain. I have a condition called reflex sympathetic dystrophy from an injury that took place when I lived in Phoenix. I was going to a baseball game, and I didn't see this massive hole in the ground, and I fell in it. And my left ankle basically exploded, the soft tissues in the ankle. I didn't break it, but the soft tissues in the ankle literally just exploded. And after weeks and weeks of not recovering from what we thought was just, a sprain, turned into something that changed the rest of my life. And now I'm 16 years later, and I've had 5 implants that are surgically implanted in my side that drip pain medication to the nerve trees that control the nerve damage and the nerve pain in my legs. I did this because after 7 months of living on pain medication and not knowing where I was, I couldn't take care of myself. I couldn't take care of my family. I barely kept my job. I lost weeks and months of my life because I was on oral pain medication. And it is a death sentence. That's my opinion. Oral pain medication leads you down a road that is a very dark road. And I feel like it can lead to the ultimate decision as a human being. And I don't want anybody to get to that point. My particular disease, reflex sympathetic dystrophy, has a very high suicide rate because people get to the point where they feel hopeless because they don't have a good support system, or they don't have a doctor that understands and diagnoses them correctly. And when you live with the chronic pain every day, it becomes all consuming. You can't go to work, you can't brush your hair, can't get dressed, can't take care of your yard, can't take care of your spouse, can't take care of your children, your career, your finances, and it can destroy you very, very quickly. So not only do you have that you're coping with, but you're also coping with the financial devastation that it causes from the amount of medical treatment that is needed to control chronic pain. I have no clue what the total is in my injury, but it's got to be close to $1.5 million in 16 years, because I've had 5 units implanted. I've had treatment after treatment before the implants were done. I have to have it filled every 3 months, but it gave me my life back. So I would do it over again in a heartbeat, because the alternative is not a productive life. And I didn't want that. I was too young for that. Happened 16 years ago when I was in my 50s. So part of this conversation today is exactly what can chronic pain do to you, besides the physical part of it, besides the physical issues that you have with just dealing with the chronic pain. Well, it can affect your relationship with your spouse. It can affect your relationship with your children. It can cost you your job. It can cost you your friends and your social interaction with people, because you're physically incapable of doing it. And all of those things lead to psychological and emotional destruction too, because when you lose all those things, you become very, very despondent, and you think about that all the time. It becomes this massive, big turning washing machine where you go over it and over and over and over in your mind, and you can't find a solution unless you have a really good support system. The financial devastation for me has been severe. Unfortunately, the responsible party wasn't held accountable enough for a lifetime of dealing with this incurable disease that I now have. But I had to get to a decision where I was just going to get on with my life and do the very best that I could. And luckily for me, I have a fantastic support system, a fantastic spouse and children and my family, and I am a self-employed business owner. Most people who have a chronic pain injury or a chronic pain disease become disabled, and so they therefore cannot work, and so they have to go on disability. I was very lucky that I did have a good support system and I did have a good treatment plan, or else I probably too would have been disabled. It happens to way too many people in our society, because our support systems and our medical systems are not patient friendly. I believe that. Our work environments are not employee friendly. As a small business owner, the one thing that I have learned above all else is the most important asset you can ever have as a small business owner are your employees. So if your employees suffer, your business is going to suffer. If you don't have good employees, you're not going to have a good business, unless you just do it all yourself, which is what I have eventually decided to do, because unfortunately for me, in our society, and that's a whole nother topic for another day, is the inability to find good workers. The generations have deteriorated the ability to find people who are willing to work. and committed to work, committed for their paychecks. I think a big part of that comes from our social media, which is also another huge subject that at some point we need to tackle. So you add all of this into this big mixing pot of general life, and you can see how people with chronic pain just fade away because they cannot get away from it, and it becomes all-consuming, and they lose their families, they lose their relationships, they lose their job and their finances, and you can see how very, very quickly somebody can go from thriving to just surviving, and that's not a way to live your life at all. So my message in this particular podcast is, if you are suffering with a chronic pain, and there are so many to even name in one podcast setting, please be proactive. Push your doctors. If you are not seeing the success that you need, push your doctors. And believe me, in the medical system, the way it's set up today, you have to push your doctors. You are your best and most important advocate, you and your partner. Because if you don't, the medical system will just push you away and not address your ultimate problem. That's unfortunately the way that our medical system is. Is it the best medical system? No. Do we want socialized medicine? No, we do not, because there you have no choices whatsoever. So it's one of the things that I tell people and encourage people to be is your best advocate. You have got to stand up for yourself. You have got to be your best voice. And if you're struggling with that, you need to have a partner that will speak up for you and get you the treatments and the medicines and the solutions so you can get back to a productive lifestyle. Nobody wants to live in a bedroom and have no social life, have no interaction with other human beings, have no interaction except with a cell phone and a TV. That's no way to live. Life is too short. There's too much to see and too much to do to become a slave to chronic pain. Happens too much. There's too many diseases that will ultimately lead you there if you are not proactive, and if you don't have a proactive attitude and proactive help with your relationships and your partner. Chronic pain is a terrible, terrible blight on our society. And part of the reason for that is we don't eat right. We don't eat good foods. We eat processed foods. I can tell you, as an Australian, when I go back to Australia and I taste the difference between our dairy products here are washed down. They're over-processed. I go back to Australia and I can immediately tell the difference. They're richer, they're fuller, they taste different, they taste better, they taste like what they should taste like. If you take milk today, this is a great example, and you multiply that and you go to where you get unprocessed milk, you will be stunned at the difference in the milk. And everyone should do that, to have a really good understanding of how processed our foods are, and how the processed foods do not make us a successful and healthy society. The American society is so overweight, so unhealthy, the worst in the world, and we spend the most in the world on our medical conditions because we're the unhealthiest in the world. All of these things, if you step back and look at it from the outside, you have got to realize that part of the problem is that we don't eat right. So the message today for this podcast is, if you're injured, stay on top of it. Make sure that you get to the bottom of what's causing you the injuries. Be proactive. Push your doctors so it doesn't take over your life, because it can quickly. As somebody who's seen 7 to 8 months of her life just disappear because I was on oral pain medications, you do not want that type of life, because it isn't a life. It's just an existence. And life is too short and too beautiful to miss out on it by living on oral pain medication. It's just not the way you want to live. So be proactive. Push your doctors. Talk to your family. Get a game plan together. And then do your research too. Know what you're dealing with. Because if you don't, you're not going to get it from the medical establishment. Trust me. I'm telling you the truth. Do your research. Find out the treatments that best work for you, and then push your doctors. Be your best advocate. And get a lot of rest. Eat right. And try not to stress. Stress is a killer that shows up and manifests in so many ways. And the American society is one of the most stressed societies on earth because we're the unhealthiest. And because our finances are destroying us because we're the unhealthiest. If you don't have medical insurance in this country, you're probably bankrupt. And even if you do have medical insurance, if you have major injuries and major chronic problems, it decimates your finances. I am one of those people. I am one of those people that financially, it has devastated my finances to be a chronic pain sufferer, and what it costs me to be able to live a normal life, because I am proactive, but it all costs money, and the insurance companies don't pay for all of it, and it all adds up. That's another thing that we have got to figure out in this country, without going to socialized medicine, because we do not want that, is a medical system that helps us without bankrupting us. Many of us are. And I feel the government should step in and prevent credit companies from penalizing you when you are diagnosed with a chronic pain disease, because it can stop you from working. You can become disabled and you can become financially devastated very quickly. And that I don't think is right. When it is no fault of your own, for you to end up like that, that's not okay. We got big problems in this country, but I think we can fix them if we can figure out how to get back to the middle and talk to each other. And that's what this is all about. Think about a picture here, and I'm going to close for the day, but think about this picture. Remember those beautiful diners you used to go into? Oh, they looked so great and they smelled great. And you'd go in, sit down at the bar, grab a coffee and a sandwich or some pancakes or a slice of coconut pie. Have a conversation with somebody that you don't know. Have a grand time and come out of there thinking, wow, I learned something new today. Or I really wasn't thinking right about that. And lo and behold, you might have made a new friend too. That's the time when we were at our best in this country called America, when we were communicating with each other, respecting each other's opinions, listening and agreeing to disagree, calmly, rationally, without violence. We've lost that. We got to figure out how to get back to it. So I hope my podcast in a small way will help you think about your positions. Are they the right positions? Are you listening to others? Are you willing to listen to others? I certainly am. That's why I'm doing this podcast. At some point too, we're going to get some speakers and get some interaction here and really get the conversations going. I would love to hear from you. If there is a specific conversation that you'd like to have, let me know what it is, please. I would love to know, and I will do a podcast around it. And then as we grow and we get speakers here and interaction with you, we can really have a conversation. Because Conversations at Carrie's Corner, I hope, will be a place where real change can start. God bless you. God bless the United States, and have a blessed day. And I'll see you in the next podcast. Take care, everyone.